to Scuderia F1, the podcast that's always up to speed with the latest Formula One news. Follow us on Twitter at Scuderia F1 Pod and subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher. Now, here are your hosts, Mark Dailey and Kevin Laramée.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to the show. Canadian Grand Prix Day 1 is officially in the books. Pre-practice 1 and 2 went earlier today, plus a bunch of the support series. And on hand at the Ile Notre Dame and Circuit Gilles Villeneuve was our one and own Kevin Laramée. Kevin, how was your day today at the track?
Oh, Mark, I learned a lesson maybe the hard way that even if there's clouds, you maybe need to put some sunscreen on because I might have some sunburns on my arms. But, oh, how fun that was. I was exactly located at turn 2. Very, very nice emplacement. And if you go on Instagram, Mark, on Instagram page, Scuderia F1 Pod, you will see all the pictures that I took, some great montage and effect. But, oh, wow, F1. I can actually say now, Mark, that I've seen Formula One live. I've heard them. That's the biggest shock that I was lucky enough to experience is the difference of sound. The engine, we'll talk about the Honda engine because it's the worst sounding engine in the entire field. Oh, but that was awesome. The difference of the cars. You can see differences in the way they're built. Just, we're not up close, right? I was on the stands and close to the track at a few spots, but there's still like a fence, a few meters and another fence, and then it's a track. But you can see the difference in the cars, the engine. Oh, it impressed me a lot. The amount of grip and the amount of speed and speed in corners, especially that Formula One has compared to the supporting races. That's how you establish you have a benchmark with the Formula One, and then you see the rest just flying off the track because they can't. So that's amazing to see too.
Yeah, it's very cool. Over the last several years, I've been a Formula One fan ever since I was a kid, and my wife has grown to love it because of me, and it's something we started to watch together. And then a couple of years ago in 2014, we went to the Spanish Grand Prix, so the first year of the hybrid engines. That was her first Grand Prix, and she was like, if she wasn't hooked before that, she's been completely hooked ever since. And on all the details, and it's just something that it's cool to watch it on TV, watch it online, watch it on your phone, wherever. But when you see it up close and when you see the cars and just hear them, it takes it to a completely different level. But the sound of the engines, and I know you're going to talk about this. I've been to 2 Grand Prix in my life. One was the 2014 Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona, and my first one was 2001 European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. And I remember vividly sitting there at the bottom of the track where they have that go down that hill into that big slow hairpin at the bottom of the Nürburgring, and just the noise when you had the entire field coming down, especially in those first couple of laps when they're still fairly grouped close together before the faster cars start to pull away. But we were sitting there and they were handing out earplugs. Jaguar, when they were in Formula One, they were handing out their own earplugs when you went in the gates. And so you just have them like in this little thing. You just put them around your neck, and they're just little styrofoam ones. You just sort of squeeze them in, pop them in your ears, and you're good to go. Anyways, I was there with about 8 friends to that weekend to enjoy that race, and I remember vividly, quite painfully actually, that when you're sitting there talking to your friends and you forget to put your earplugs in, especially in those days, the pre-hybrid turbo V6 engines that they have nowadays, that if you didn't have your earplugs in, it was a very painful experience. And then I think 3 years ago in Spain, while we had the earplugs, I don't ever remember putting them in my ears once the entire weekend. So there you go.
Yeah, no, like the Formula One were probably the most bearable cars today. Like Formula 1600, the Porsche GT3, and the Ferrari Challenge. I didn't have earplugs, but I had my earbuds with me. And they're like earbuds that actually go really deep into your ear and with rubber, so they block like the outside noise. I had to put them on. I actually did for the most amount of the supporting races because the noise level was almost unbearable. Those Porsche GT3, man, that was painful. The noise, I was like, geez, can you lay off the gas for a second? My ears are bleeding. But no, it was actually fun to watch those Porsches. I have to say Ferrari Challenge was more impressive, but being more of a fan of race cars than cars themselves, I don't know if you get what I'm saying. I couldn't care less seeing an actual real life Ferrari pass in front of me. If it was a Formula One Ferrari, I would drool all over it. it's just a car, I don't really care. I don't even own a driver's license. But if it's a race car, now you're talking to me. So Formula 1600 and Formula 1 was the most impressive things for me today.
Yeah, well, I guess, of course, that it's more than just the Formula One, because, I mean, they have the support series, and you literally don't have to get out of your seats. There's action basically, well, I wouldn't say from dusk or from dawn until dusk, but it isn't too far off of that. There's definitely to keep you engaged and focused and having fun the entire day. So we had 2 practice sessions today. So bring us up to speed, what happened and what your impressions were of today's events.
Unfortunately, you know where I'm going with this. My highlight of FP1, man, I feel so terrible for him. And I feel terrible laughing. And I feel terrible finding it hilarious and ironic. And still, I feel terrible for the guy because this guy has won me over the last 2 months. Fernando Alonso had a very difficult FP1 and almost no FP2. And the image of him out of the car, arms crossed, that I took. Oh, you have to go on our Instagram to see it. It's not of him. Like I couldn't really see him from where I was sitting. He was too far away. But I had the screen there, and the screen was showing Fernando, #angryface_Fernando, with his arms crossed, just re-questioning his life choices. And I think we can say that come September, even though the ultimatum might be September, I think his decision is took.
I think it has to be, but more than that, I'm wondering whether or not we are going to actually see that split between Honda and McLaren for 2018. Because
you have to. Like, come on. Like if it's not one thing, it's the other. Mark. Everybody felt terrible, and everybody was laughing in the stands. That's the thing. Everybody was giving a lot of applause for Fernando every time he was passing around. When he came out of the pit in FP2, there was a roar in the crowd. Man, I was surprised by the knowledge of the Formula One crowd in Montreal. Like, things we talk about the show all the time. Like, the crowd reacts to things happening on the track. Like, barely like anything, just Fernando coming out of the pit. But we know it, like, Fernando completing a lap, the crowd erupted. Like, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, poor Fernando. I mean, I was doing a little bit of research about it. And of course, you have the top teams that are pretty much locked out for next year. You have Mercedes, Ferrari. Well, I guess that's going to be a bit of an interesting situation with Ferrari, but I can't see him going back there. And then Red Bull. And then the one team that keeps coming up, rumored to be interested or a possible landing point for Fernando Alonso, should he choose to leave McLaren, would be Renault. But apparently Renault is nowhere in the position to be able to afford to pay him the rumored $40 million per year salary. So I think the one, I don't know if it's even likely or plausible or logical that it could happen, but yep. I could actually see Fernando staying at McLaren if they actually manage to pull off a deal and get Mercedes engines. That to me almost seems like a reasonable resolution at this point in time.
I feel that if Ferrari does not win the Drivers' Championship this year, if Lewis Hamilton, example, pipes Ferrari at the end of the line, I feel that Ferrari is going to go all in next season because they feel to have the car to do so, and they will get Alonso back in that car. You have Alonso Vettel, 2 proven champion. You give them a car that's worthy of winning. Should equal a championship. I think that's the mindset they will have if they do not win. If they win this year, it's probable and possible, if Kimi plays nice the rest of the season, that Kimi gets himself a new contract. Speaking of Kimi was the best driver today. By far. Lap of his life, some people were saying in the stands next to me in FP2. And I have to say he has been impressive. And the fact that both Ferrari are very powerful, you can see, maybe we should get the speed trap result, because the speed trap result actually are really important in Montreal compared to some other places, which, like Monaco, who gives a damn about the speed trap because you don't really need it anyways. But in Montreal, you get to 340 today, which is kind of insane. 340 kilometers an hour. Think about that, Mark.
Where's the speed trap? At the end of the long straightaway before they go into the last chicane, before the Wall of Champions?
Before the end, I would think it's like 3/4 down the end of that runway, I believe.
Yeah.
Because they have to time it at the peak, right? So it's a few measures that are put together to create that speed trap, because the trap is more than one measurement. It's between points usually. But yeah, it's in that spot at 340. That's crazy. And Kimi got himself to that. The Mercedes has been really powerful too, but again, it's all about that fine-tuning, and that's kind of what seems to be the problem with the Mercs right now compared to either Kimi or Raikkonen doing laps of their lives, is that fine-tuning of that complicated machinery that the Mercedes is compared to Ferrari. And I think it really comes down to that.
It's interesting, too, because apparently Lewis Hamilton is saying that he feels that his car is getting more dialed in, so that could be a warning shot for the rest of the teams in Formula One, especially Ferrari, that if Hamilton's happy with his car, then you're going to have to definitely look out this weekend and season, because I say that they have been doing quite a bit of work last he says that his Mercedes is back to close of dominance. So like I say, it sounds rather ominous, doesn't it?
No, it does. And the engine, the sound of the engine of the Mercedes is quite beautiful compared to some other. Like Honda, that McLaren engine, Mark, it has a rattle to it. It sounds disgusting. It sounds like it's broken. Like, you can actually tell the performance of the motor by the engine too, right? Because of the output. If everything's literally rolling correctly, turning correctly, you'll hear a certain hum compared to one that, like, if you overpower and overtax that engine trying to get anything out of it, has a different, you know what I mean? And that's what you can actually hear in the Honda engine is that rattle, it doesn't sound anything like the other engine, the Renault one. Sounds not too bad. Ferrari and Mercedes clearly sounds better. And I know it's not necessarily a important factor, but it's not a factor itself. It's a result of other things. The sound is a result of how the motor is built, of how it's running, of how it's processing everything, and how it's actually firing. And we're not going to get into how our engine works here, but that's creates the sound. And it's a creation of how you built it. But if you didn't build it correctly, that creation will be awful. And that's a Honda. But you do see a certain advantage to the teams with Mercedes engine. Williams was showing some better prowess with Massa top 10 in FP2. Lance will land 17. We'll talk about Lance later in our segment, Taking a Stroll with Lance. There's a certain... we talked about this feeling last week, Mark. I felt it in the stands, and everybody there was cheers, but it was not like adulation cheers like we felt in 1996. Nothing even close to it. It was more like, yeah, you're from here, we respect you, we like what you've done, but you kind of haven't earned your spot here yet.
Yeah, no kidding. There has been quite a lot of speculation and criticism, and a lot of things directed at Lance over the last couple of days, and. I think what is really telling at the moment is just how far off the pace he is of his own teammate, and Felipe Massa is, obviously not as quick as some of the guys that are in front of him, but there is a big difference between the two of them. If you look at Massa this afternoon, he did a 1:14.063, and you look at Stroll, he did a 1:15.24. So that's a big difference right there, over 1.1 seconds between the two of them. So your teammate in Formula One is always going to be the benchmark and the way that people are going to compare you. And Lance has really got to start delivering some sort of results soon. At least starting to outperform his teammate, I think, would be a good start if he could manage it.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to the easy route here, Mark. It's easy for us to talk about Lance and to make jokes about him and say that he whatever. But it's time that he stopped taking a stroll on the track. It's time now that he shows a little bit of potential. That at least in one free practice or qualifying, he pulls out a crazy result or just one great lap or something, right? He kind of has to show that. Like, I don't care if your engine and you end up in the wall all the time. Well, I actually cared, but what I mean is... You got to show something. You got to show like you're fighting for your life and you're getting a great lap in free practice. Just to show some fight, show some rebuttal, I don't know, right? That's what we're kind of missing because Lance feels like a robot now. He's saying all the right things and saying the right things. When he was asked questions this morning, first answer wasn't like, I'm pumped to try to get a good lap. No, he's like, it's great to be here, to be home. Like, stop saying what your publicist told you to say all the time. Come on. Be you a little bit. Getting ready for this race, I was watching videos of Jacques Villeneuve in 1996 getting into TV and talking. Man, I miss him. Man, I miss people just saying what they actually want to say and not just spewing what their publicists are telling them to. And that's why I love Alonso. That's why I love Vettel. Because with the experience, you find the just middle and you actually know how to speak your mind with still respecting everything else.
And I think that was part of the reason why we were such big fans of Jacques Villeneuve back in the day, because Jacques was very much one of those guys, and he always said what he wanted to say. And sometimes he was very blunt about it too. And I think that won him his fair share of fans for that. But what else did impress you today? I noticed I know it's still just a free practice, but if you have the top 5 cars, the 2 Mercedes and 2 Ferraris and a Red Bull, all within half a second of one another, I think that was quite interesting, although it didn't really go very well for Red Bull. Obviously, Max Verstappen, he just came to a grinding halt later in the practice session, and I believe that Danny Ricciardo actually had some engine problems, did he not?
I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so just a few days ago, Mark. I had a feeling Red Bull, with their catch-up work they're doing in development, because the other team went further than them during the offseason. It's that simple. They had setbacks, and when you have setbacks, you don't go as far as you could have in the development research, but more proving your theories than anything else. And we've seen Ferrari and the Mercs do that. So they play the catch-up. When you play catch-up, Mark, when you try to achieve, to maybe overrun things, to try and understand things, you go a little further than reliability line is. That reliability line is always just a little bit below the actual output of the car. But when you get to that output, that's where it breaks, and that's where you have troubles. And in a circuit like Montreal, which you can't hide those flaws. If you want to overclock the motor on the engine, you get a problem like today.
Definitely. I think the key is to have a car that is as reliable and as competitive as it's going to get right out of the gate at the start of the season, and then just evolve it as necessary from there, just in little bits. I mean, if you're trying to do major developments throughout the year, that just seems like too much of a task to accomplish, especially when you're already sort of facing that big of a deficit. But yeah, it's disappointing. I know that Daniel Ricciardo, he won his very first Grand Prix at Montreal in 2014. He's had a couple of podiums here in the last couple of races. But based on what we've seen today, yeah, I think it would be a bit of a stretch to see Ricciardo extend that run of good fortune for another week.
Yeah, I don't feel like the Red Bulls will have necessarily a good race on Sunday, but that could all change. There might be some showers. We'll see. There was some expected today, never showed up, but it was more expected for 4. It never happened. It was beautiful at 4, and that's how quick things can change, especially at the track, Mark. The way it is with the river so close and being just a little bit off the river path and having those cities, 2 cities not connected, there's a river between, creates different weather patterns that can actually change in just a few minutes. And the track is more like launch, so at one part of the track something could happen and that can actually not happen at the other side. So there's always those things possible at the circuit, and it is on an island, so you do have like the island at 5. And we forget this sometimes. That's what I realized today. Is like, geez, track's like 5-6 meters off the water sometimes, just because there's a forest between. We don't think about it.
Yeah, that's true. But does the weather actually change that quickly?
It can. It's predictable because there's radar, and you have very good information in that area of the city. But there's with the mountain, because there's a mountain close, right? So the mountain creates, but it's not a high mountain, so it doesn't really. But it does create some sort of microclimate there, but not enough to be unpredictable. It is predictable, and we've seen Ferrari back in the late 90s, early 2000s with their. Back then, it was like no limits on the spending, right? So they had their own weather forecast guys and people, and they got an advantage on that, knowing when to and when not to change tires and getting some strategy advantage there. We've seen this happen before at this track.
Definitely. And it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of days. Do you know what the weather forecast for tomorrow is for qualifying? Any idea?
Supposed to be really nice. I think it's supposed to be like 24 degrees, so track temperature would be close to 35 if it's sunny. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a very hot day, which could mean trouble with the ultra soft tire. So we'll see if tomorrow gets hotter than today. Today, the ultra soft was clearly the most efficient and performant tire. If tomorrow it's a little too hot, if it gets more hot than today, tomorrow might be a little too hot for those ultra soft, but those Pirelli tires of this year's configuration changed the way we think about tires, and the benchmarks that we have of the last years, over the last few years, like last year, Mark, if your ultra soft tire got over 35, 40 degrees while like on the track even higher than that, it will lose efficiency very, very quickly and be almost inefficient. You had to go down more hard tires. So this year they're differently made. The benchmarks are different. Yes, the teams are still complaining that the tires might be too inflated, like the PSIs is way too high, maybe down low, because this is regulated by Pirelli. The team have no say whatsoever on the inflation ratio of the tires. So they wish they would be a little softer. But I think maybe if it's too warm tomorrow, the ultra soft might not be like all the data of today. If tomorrow it's even hotter, might not be useful.
It'll be very interesting to see. So, Kevin, let's start winding this one up. What were your final takeaways, your big impressions of the day today from free practice?
Haas are in trouble. Grosjean is starting to be fed up. He actually said so on the radio. So to say it like this out in the open means a lot. So that's one thing to keep an eye on, especially during the weekend. Again, Montreal is a place where the flaws cannot be hidden in the corners of the track. So we will have I predict one safety car at least on Sunday. But I do feel that it will be a war of attrition, and some cars like Haas, McLaren, and Red Bull, and dare I say, the Mercedes brakes will be something to look at on Sunday.
Well, it's always a very tough circuit on brakes, so that will be one to watch. And Mercedes, like you say, have had troubles there over the last couple of years. And I think that was part of the reason, if I remember correctly, how Danny Ricciardo came by to win in Montreal 3 years ago. So what's on the agenda for tomorrow then, Kevin, please?
Early morning going to the track for the site opened at 8, so I'll be there because today was a bit of a shambles going to the site. Usually there was more than one entrance. This year there was only one because of construction around the metro area on the island itself. There's going to be a new plaza built, so they're doing that. So because of that, there's only one entrance, so everybody was waiting in line. People waited for hours. Some people, it wasn't too bad for us because we got there quite early. So that tomorrow morning, for FP1 tomorrow morning. Then we have other qualifying and races. Then of course, F1 qualifying, and after that, the race Formula 1600, which I'm excited to see right after the F1 qualifying.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll be able to connect tomorrow afternoon and do a quick recap of the qualifying and all the rest of the action at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve tomorrow afternoon. Anything else going on in the network between now and then?
Nope. Totally focused on F1 for the next few days. And tomorrow, again, you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram, the Instagram of Scuderia F1 Pod, Scuderia F1_pod, I believe. Give it a follow. Tomorrow I will continue to berate you and to throw everything I can F1 related videos, hyperlapse, slow motions, whatever I feel like it's valuable to show you, I will tomorrow again throughout the day, starting early tomorrow morning with a little good morning on the track. And yes, I am dressed in Williams gear. It is because of Williams in its history, and I do really like the Martini old school vintage look it has. So yes, tomorrow you can find me in stand 11 if you're close to or on the circuit. Stand 11, hit me out on Twitter and I'll come and say hello.
Sounds good. All right, well, thank you very much, Kevin. We look forward to seeing what happens tomorrow and the rest of the weekend. It's going to be fun. Love the Canadian Grand Prix, obviously extra special for us. And that's a wrap. Follow all the action, like Kevin said, on Instagram at Scuderia F_F1 podcast, also on Twitter at Scuderia F1 pod. That's a wrap. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Scuderia F1 podcast. If you want to get the show notes for this episode, then head over to ScuderiaF1pod.com. Want to get in touch with us? Then email us at ScuderiaF1pod@gmail.com.